What's happening? Happy Friday to everybody watching this podcast, listening to this podcast. Thank you for joining me. As always, it is very much appreciated. Before we get started, don't forget to give this video a like. That thumbs up means everything. So give us that thumbs up on YouTube. You can comment on the video as well. Subscribe, trying to get to 3,500 subscribers. So let's hit that subscribe button and make sure you get notified. And on Spotify, Apple Pods, rate and review. Did the Patriots get a steal in free agency? You know, I was doing the podcast yesterday. I was recording a podcast with Greg Bedard. As you know, many of you, I do the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Greg. And we were recording that pod yesterday. And Greg had watched film of Chuks Okorafor. And Greg said if Chuks develops a quote-unquote punch, offensive line term, if Chuks develops a punch, the Patriots could have a steal. And Greg, watching Chuks during minicamp, he had said multiple times he thought Chuks looked pretty good to him. And we know reportedly the Patriots have loved what they've seen from Okorafor at left tackle throughout the early practices. Of course, we have training camp next week, but Scott Peters, Robert Kugler apparently feel very good about Chuks being the left tackle for this football team this year. And Greg, looking back at last year's film of Chuks in Pittsburgh, he was surprised that he was benched. And we went into this when Okorafor was signed by Elliott Wolf months ago, but Chuks was benched by Pittsburgh not because his level of play. He was benched because he criticized the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, at the time. He criticized him during a game. And Mike Tomlin heard that criticism and decided to sit Okorafor. Now, what's funny about everything is that 2 weeks later, Canada was fired as the OC. So Okorafor was actually being honest. It was an honest assessment of the play calling at the time. But Tomlin did not like a player criticizing a coach during a game, decided to sit him and then bench him after that. So you start to read some of these reports about the Patriots coaching staff feeling good about Chuks, Greg watching the film, and we know that Bedard is a wet blanket a lot of times. Bedard watching the film and saying, hey, if Chuks can tweak a couple of things, he might end up being a pretty damn good left tackle. Now, this is not a guarantee, but if the coaching staff is right, if Elliott Wolf is right in his evaluation of Okorafor, I want to look at this optimistically today. Because throughout this offseason, we've talked about the O-line. We've talked about Chuks. We've talked about left tackle. And it's a major question mark. And until I see it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Okorafor can play left tackle consistently at the NFL level. But if we want to look at this optimistically, and we want to go off of what Greg said and how the Patriots coaching staff feels, and Elliott Wolf's eval of the player before they signed him. Remember, Okorafor was signed really early in free agency, really early, addressing a tackle need. So Elliott Wolf felt pretty confident that Okorafor could be an answer. So I want to look at this optimistically. It's Friday. Let's be positive. Let's look at Okorafor and say to ourselves, what happens if he is a steal? What happens if Elliott Wolf is right? What happens if Wolf is correct in his assessment that Okorafor can play left tackle? What if Peters and Kugler are the coaches talking to these reporters saying that they love what they've seen from Chuks so far? What if he can handle left tackle? What if he solidifies that spot? And in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we're talking about Okorafor left tackle, and we don't have a huge concern. What if that is the case? If that is the case, that is a huge development. If Okorafor ends up being a steal, and we look back at this free agency period and we say, Wolves stole Okorafor at the very beginning of the process. If that's what happens, it is a gigantic development for the Patriots and this Patriots offensive line, because left tackle at that point would be solved. We would no longer be talking about how do you address that spot. We wouldn't have images of the good Trent Brown dancing in our heads. We wouldn't be concerned about the left side causing a catastrophic event to a quarterback. We wouldn't be worried about that. Imagine a world where left tackle would be solved. We haven't had that in a few years since the good Trent Brown was around, right? And consistently around. Not around for a few weeks and then going MIA for a few weeks. left tackle would be solved. And that right there is a critical need. And if a critical need is solved, it's just a huge development for this football team. In Okorafor to be a steal, he doesn't even have to be spectacular, right? You just need solid play. If Okorafor is average at left tackle, that's fine. Offensive line play across the NFL is deteriorating. Tackle play across the league is deteriorating. At the college level, these tackles, they're not asked to pass protect for long periods of time. If you watch college football, I know not many of you do. I watch college football every Saturday. Love college football. If you watch college football, the offensive line has one job. Just hold your own for about 2 seconds and then move forward with the next play. When we talk about pass protection, it's getting the football out quickly. Shotgun, get the snap within 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, get rid of that football. Live to see another day. RPO action, pre-snap, misdirection, all of those things. You see it a ton in college football now. Spread formations. It is to relieve the pressure on the O-line. And what happens is these young offensive linemen, they get drafted into the league, and they're not what they used to be 15 years ago. They're just trying to survive. So if you get average play from Okorafor, you feel good. But if he's a steal and you actually get pretty damn good play or very good play, that is just a huge development for the Patriots. You've got that spot solved, which means you don't have to invest a draft pick into left tackle. Just imagine a world here for a minute. Again, we're being optimistic. We're being positive. Off of Bedard watching the Chuks film and saying, if he tweaks a couple things, if he works on a couple of things, if Peters and Kugler can get him focused on just a couple of different things, he could end up being a steal. The reports that the Patriots love what they've seen from Chuks so far. Imagine a world where you don't have to worry about investing a draft pick into a left tackle. That opens everything up. Because right now, left tackle is one of the primary needs, if not the need. If Okorafor doesn't work out, it is my personal opinion, you go into the 25 draft thinking left tackle. That is your pick. Your first-round pick, if a guy is there, now you don't reach. You don't go crazy. You don't do anything bananas. But if somebody is there that is rated highly, and there are a couple of tackles that right now, July 19, 2024, there are a couple of tackles that look like they're going to be top 10 picks in next year's draft. If you have one of those left tackles on the board, you are going to spend your pick on that spot. That's my personal opinion. Unless you believe that Caden Wallace can swing over to the left side. But again, you get into the Onwenu conversation. Is Onwenu a tackle? Is he a guard? All of that stuff. To make it easy, what would make this process easy for the Patriots, for Wolf, for us, the media watching and evaluating, for fans watching and cheering, what would make it easy? The most simple line, a direct line, would be Okorafor working out. You don't have to address that position in the draft. Now you can pay attention to other needs and not have to worry about it. That would be a huge weight lifted off the chest and shoulders and back of Elliott Wolf in that front office. You have left tackle addressed. Now you start to look at other needs. Now you start to look at, hey, maybe we do trade down from the spot that we have because we don't need a tackle. We don't need a quarterback. We have those two things figured out. Maybe you go wide receiver 1 in next year's first round if somebody is an absolute stud and you don't have to worry about drafting a tackle. It would just be a significant development. And if Okorafor can work out, the rest of the line falls into place. Let's just say this. Mike Onwenu ends up being a guard because he didn't lose all the weight that he needed to lose, or maybe he's not the best scheme fit in that spot with this offense, whatever it is. Yes, it would be disappointing because you spent money and said he was a tackle, but if you look at the guard market, Quinn Miners for Denver just signed a 4-year, $80 million contract extension. Guards in the NFL now, they're making upwards of $20 million a year. So as we see the market evolve, opinions evolve, and the opinion when you look at Onwenu's contract is that he's pretty much right in line with the top guards. I think he's the 6th highest paid guard or something like that. He's not the top paid guard in the league. So even if he is playing right guard for you, he's making top guard money. So that contract now is defensible when you start to look at the market. I didn't think that a few months ago. I thought, hey, if he plays tackle, that contract is justified. But now you look at Quinn Miners getting $80 million, and you look at some of these other guards, Hunt getting like 19, 20 million a year. The NFL is changing, and we have to change along with the NFL. And what the NFL is telling us, interior defensive linemen, that pass rush is becoming a new headache for the league, which is good news for the Patriots that they signed Christian Barmore, because you have a young interior defensive lineman that can get after the quarterback and draw double teams. So the league is telling us, yeah, offensive guard 3 or 4 years ago might have been an afterthought, but now if you get a good one, and you don't have to overdraft one, okay? But if you get a good one, you keep them. And you pay that guy real money because you're trying to suppress that interior pass rush. So let's say Onwenu stays at guard. If Okorafor works at left tackle, now I feel pretty decent about the offensive line, right? If Okorafor does end up being a quote-unquote steal, you've got Okorafor at left tackle. You've got City So at left guard. I know So played right guard last year for the Patriots, but he played left guard in college. He was a left guard by trade. So you've got Okorafor and So on the left side. David Andrews is as solid as they come. Pro Football Focus has him ranked as the 6th best center in football. You've got Andrews in the middle. You've got Onwenu at right guard. Onwenu is one of the best guards in football as long as he is there athletically and focused on playing. If he's been the same Onwenu that we've seen throughout his career so far, you've got a rock-solid right guard, one of the best guards in football. And then you've got to figure out right tackle. And if Caden Wallace isn't an absolute disaster, don't forget, you can help one guy on the offensive line. We've said that in prior podcasts. So if you've got 4 out of the 5, you've got Wallace playing right tackle, you can help Wallace on the right side. And now all of a sudden, your offensive line doesn't look like an abomination. If Okorafor is solid, if he is a steal, if he is even very good, if we want to go that far, and I don't want to get that far, but if he is a steal and we say, man, he's pretty damn good at left tackle, what a find by Elliott Wolf. What a job by that offensive line coaching staff. Okorafor, So, David Andrews, Onwenu, and Wallace, with some help if needed, is not an abomination. It's not a crazy thing. I would not walk into an NFL Sunday freaking out about that offensive line. I'd feel pretty good. I'd say they're at least competent, especially when you compare them to the rest of the league. Also, you have Okorafor. You can sign him to an extension, right? If you have moved him to left tackle, say the transition goes well. That's the premise here, that Okorafor is a steal, and he works out at left tackle. Now you can work on getting him signed to a contract extension during the season. You don't even let him get to free agency. And so now you look at that situation. You say Okorafor is going to be 27 years old next month. He's walking into his prime. The Patriots gave him the opportunity to play left tackle to make more money. They took him out of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wasn't working out because of the reasons we talked about earlier. And if you can sign Okorafor to an extension, now look at your offensive line. Okorafor on an extension, So on his rookie deal. Andrews just got his extension. Onwenu just got his extension. Caden Wallace on his rookie deal. So not only if Okorafor works out, in the short term, that's a great thing. But if you can get him signed to a contract extension, and there would be really no reason why you would not. If the guy proves himself to be a left tackle, you play him at left tackle, he works there, you have over $100 million in cap space next offseason. There is zero reason why you would not be able to keep Okorafor in town. So if you kept Okorafor in town, if he worked out, you get him on an extension. Now your offensive line is competent, if not good, and you also have them all signed, sealed, and delivered for multiple years. You don't even have to worry about the offensive line going into the 2025 offseason if that's how it falls together. If it unfolds like that, man, what a great spot for the Patriots and Elliott Wolf to be in. Imagine walking into an offseason. We haven't had this in a while here in New England. Imagine walking into an offseason not worrying about your offensive line. It's like heaven on earth. Could you imagine if that was the case? It would allow you to focus on other offensive needs, right? Now you can look at wide receiver 1. Now you can look at the future at tight end. Jaheim Bell hopefully works out, but you're still going to need to replenish that that position at some point. Austin Hooper's on a 1-year deal. Hunter Henry's a little bit older. So now if you've got the offensive line figured out, you are just pumping your focus towards wide receiver and tight end, trying to get the best wide receiver you can get and trying to replace Austin Hooper and start to think about the future behind Hunter Henry, beyond Jaheim Bell. So it would really put you in a situation that you are now surrounding Drake May with quality talent. And all these guys would be on the long term. And that's what Elliott Wolf talks about, right? Drafting and developing. If you hit on a core 4 and you get an extension done, your offensive line is set. And then if you can land a wide receiver 1 next offseason, if you don't trade for an Ayuk right now, which I don't think is going to happen, but if you land your wide receiver 1 next offseason, if it's T. Higgins, if it's Ayuk in a trade, if it's DK Metcalf in a trade, if it's a draft pick, whatever it is, now you start to see the pieces coming together, right? Now you've got your offensive line figured out, solidified for a couple of years. You've got your young future franchise quarterback. Your QB1 is ready to roll. You've got that new wide receiver 1 next offseason. That is going to be a long-term situation, whether you trade for somebody or you sign somebody or you draft somebody. And now you've got that wide receiver 1 to go along with Polk and Baker and Pop Douglas, all on their rookie contracts. You've got Jaheim Bell at tight end on his rookie contract. You start to see the pieces fall together. I mean, the Okorafor thing, if he could work out, I cannot overstate how big of a development that would be for this football team. The trickle-down effect would be immense. And it would also tell us that the Patriots have the right offensive line coaches with Peters and Kugler. All right. Before we move on, I want to talk about an ESPN ranking that stood out. And I'm not talking about the top 100 list and Tom Brady. I want to get to that in a minute. But first, I want to thank Dilbert and Pokemon. Yeah, it sounds a little weird, but thanks to Dilbert and Pokemon, 2 new Patreon subscribers this week, 2 new Patreon members. Patreon is where you get more Patriots coverage. You get Sox, Celtics, and Bruins content as well. We do an exclusive podcast on Wednesdays that we don't put on YouTube. I'm going to record another podcast later today, which is called Off the Cuff. It's some national storylines. It's some fun. It's my personal life. It's the radio life. We do Off the Cuff on Fridays. And really, if you don't want all that extra content, if you just want to help us out financially, some people sign up for the Patreon to do that. It's $5 a month, $5 a month, $1.25 a week. And people might not send super chats. They might not send super stickers and all of that stuff. But what they do is they subscribe to the Patreon channel. And that is, in essence, their super chat for the month. And it's $5. You get all that extra content. Not a bad deal. Of course, I'm biased. I do it. But if you want to sign up, check it out. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles. It's CATTLES. I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you to Dilbert and Pokemon for signing up for the Patreon this week. Also, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Like this channel. That's how we grow the traffic. We build this community. Give us that thumbs up. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you're at Spotify, Apple Pods, rate and review. All right, let's jump to the final thing I want to talk about this week on the podcast. ESPN, they've done a series. Jeremy Fowler does a great job. Top 10 rankings at the positions across the league, right? And there were not a ton of Patriots mentioned in the top 10. There were some Patriots that got votes. I believe Kyle Duggar finished like 8th in the safety voting. I think Barmore either got honorable mention or got some votes. So it wasn't really a ton of Patriots on these lists. But the cornerback list was interesting because on the cornerback list, Jeremy Fowler, after talking to executives, league personnel, after the votes were in, the votes were counted. In an election year, the votes were counted. Christian Gonzalez ended up getting an honorable mention. Now, you might say, oh, Nick, it's an honorable mention. What's the big deal? I think it's a pretty big deal. I think it's a significant deal because there were executives and people in the league that were mentioning Christian Gonzalez, some of them voting for Christian Gonzalez, and Gonzalez getting an honorable mention, which is just outside the top 10. I think he was, if you went by the number of guys where they listed him, he was 14th or 15th. But put that in perspective. Gonzalez is seen as a top 15 cornerback in the league. The dude played 4 games last year. He has 4 games as his NFL career to go off of. And after 4 games, this is telling us that many people in the league see Gonzalez already in the top 15. 4 games. And there was an executive in this piece that said if Gonzalez had played more, if he didn't get hurt, he would have had Gonzalez higher on the list, and he called Gonzalez a stud. That was an anonymous AFC executive. Said, he would have been higher than 15 if he played more games. So when you look at Christian Gonzalez, some people, are you a Patriots homer, right? Are you a homer? Are you falling in love with Gonzalez? Your colored glasses are rose colored, right? And people think you might be thinking too highly of Gonzalez. This ranking tells us not so much, because Gonzalez has a legitimate shot at being a top 10 cornerback this year if he stays healthy. That's the big if. If he can stay healthy, he is seen as somebody who is building momentum. And it's exactly what I've been talking about with Gonzalez when we bring him up. I believe that Gonzalez is no doubt a shutdown cornerback 1. He's the type of talent that can shut down half of the field for against a passing offense, which is just huge. And so when you look at Gonzalez, right, his ability, because don't forget the 4 games that he played, it wasn't like he was playing tomato cans. He played Miami. He played Philly. I mean, he played a number of really good wide receivers in his first month. And he played really well. Talk about jumping into the deep end. And he played against some of the best receivers in football. And evaluators are already telling you he's right there in the top 15. And that's only playing 4 of the 17 games. So if he can stay healthy, if the Patriots keep him on track from a health standpoint, and he gives you 17 games this year, Gonzalez is going to be a top 10 cornerback in football. I don't have much doubt about that. If he stays healthy, he's going to be a top 10 cornerback. And when you think about Gonzalez being a top 10 cornerback on his rookie deal, you're talking about incredible value. It is a critical position, right? If you can get a true, legitimate outside corner 1 on a rookie deal, man. I mean, if you can get a legitimate outside corner 1 in any way, it's a big time deal. But to have him on that rookie scaled contract, he's not costing you $25 million a year, right? That is incredible value. And that allows you to spend even more money at other positions. It allows you to build up the team even more. So to have that outside corner 1 in Gonzalez on a rookie contract, that pick, we look back, we're going to look back at that pick if he stays healthy and go, that is one of the steals of the century. If this guy is like one of the best cornerbacks in football and you got him where you got him in the mid to late first round, we're going to look back at that pick and go, my goodness, what a pick. And the advantage of shutting down half the field cannot be and should not be overlooked. Because if Gonzalez can shut down his half of the field, what does that do? That makes life a hell of a lot easier for your outside cornerback too. Whether it's Jonathan Jones or Alex Austin, maybe Isaiah Bolden pops. But if you're looking at one of those guys, it is less pressure on them if Gonzalez is the stud that we saw him be in the first month of last year. Because now you've got Austin just with the capability of getting help and shutting that side of the field down. It's like you go back to Revis and Brandon Browner. You had Revis shutting down the opposition's 1, and then you had Brandon Browner being physical at the line of scrimmage with help over the top, and that made the defense incredibly difficult to deal with, right? You could have the same damn thing here with Christian Gonzalez. I'm not saying Gonzalez is Revis, but if you have Gonzalez as an outside corner 1, a legitimate shutdown corner, he takes out the number 1. And now you have, let's say, Alex Austin, who looked pretty good at minicamp and showed flashes at the end of last year. Now you have, Alex Austin on the opposite side of Gonzalez, and Austin has some help. You can devote some help to him And now you look at this secondary. Gonzalez, outside corner one, shutdown guy. Alex Austin with help on the opposite. Jonathan Jones slides into the slot, or maybe it's Marcus Jones. One of those Joneses can slide back to safety, along with Jalen Hawkins and Duggar and Peppers. And now all of a sudden, your secondary is damn good. So the Gonzalez piece is the most important piece. It's the most difficult piece to find. But once you find that legitimate outside corner, once you find that guy, it makes it so much easier for the rest of the pieces to fall into place. It's much like the Okorafor left tackle conversation we just had. Once you find that one spot, if you can find that one spot, the rest of the line can fall into place. And when you have that outside corner one, the rest of the secondary kind of falls into place. It helps the pass rush because now you don't have to devote extra guys if you don't want to into the secondary and in with your coverage. Now you can maybe devote some extra pressure at the line of scrimmage. So it helps your pass rush. It also helps your pass rush without sending extra help, because now if you have good coverage, the quarterback is going to get antsy. And what we just talked about last, segment with the core foreign offensive lines across the NFL. NFL offensive lines, they are not good at holding their water for 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds. If you've got really good coverage out there, now the quarterback is holding onto the football. He's pumping, he's padding. He's getting nervous. He's looking all around. And so now you're getting to the quarterback. You're throwing off his timing. You're throwing off the offense's timing. And it all starts with that one guy. That's why Bill was always paying cornerback one, right? If he didn't draft and find the guy, he was always going to go out and get one. He did it with Revis. He did it with Gilmore. He went out and traded for Aqib Talib. He was always going to try to go out and get that outside corner one, because Bill always knew how critical that player was to any defense. No matter what coverage you're running, no matter what defensive scheme you're running, if you have an outside cornerback one who can shut somebody down week in and week out, it really breathes life into your defense and into your secondary. The advantage of shutting down half the field. Bill knew it. And that's why he was consistently going after that one guy. And now you look at it in the big picture. Let's just take a deep breath. 30,000-foot view. Gonzalez, blue chip guy at corner. Drake May, blue chip talent. We'll see if he fulfills the talent. Blue chip talent at quarterback. We talked about earlier in this podcast the importance now of offensive guard play and how teams have started to pay guards big money. And that's because they're looking at the interior defensive line and the pass rush, and interior pass rush is becoming more and more important in the league. Christian Barmore, blue chip kind of talent, signed, sealed, and delivered. If Keon White, I don't want to get too crazy, but if Keon White shows those flashes and he starts to pop, now you've got a young defensive edge. When you think about the most important positions in football, we all know this is a rebuild. I don't think many of us, if any of us, think this team is going to make the playoffs this year. We are all realistic, but what you want to do during a rebuild is to find those building blocks and hold on to them for dear life. And when you look at what Elliott Wolf is doing, you look at Drake May, most important position in sports, rookie contract, right? If he hits, you have a blue chip quarterback one on his rookie scale deal. That's one down. Interior defensive lineman who can get to the quarterback. Barmore stays healthy. I am confident he's going to be one of the top 5 to 8 interior defensive linemen in football. He just got his extension. Young blue chip prospect at a critical position. Do it that way. That's better. Young blue chip prospect at a critical position. Number 2, long-term, sealed up. Christian Gonzalez, critical position number 3. Outside cornerback 1. Legitimate guy who could shut down top receivers on the other team. Rookie scaled contract. Here for years. Long-term set. That's number 3. And then if you wanted to extend to Keon White, if Keon could pop, critical position number 4, defensive end, edge, pass rusher, Keon White, rookie deal, locked in for the long term. If you're telling me a year from now that you have Drake May, Christian Barmore, Christian Gonzalez, and Keon White at 4 critical positions, looking like blue chip guys, sealed up for the long term, that is a great start to a rebuild. Chuks Okorafor, we talked about, can he work out at left tackle? If he can, even better. Now you've got your left tackle sealed up, hitting his prime. And yes, you still need the wide receiver 1. But Rome wasn't built in a day. And with those contracts, with May and White and Gonzalez and Barmore's contract already figured out, it allows you to go out there and spend money at other positions, and that's when you start to build a beast. That's why the Patriots can call San Francisco about Brandon Ayuk, because they got the money. I would imagine they'll be in on T. Higgins if he hits unrestricted free agency. I imagine they'll be in on him even if he gets franchise tagged. So you start to see the pieces. Realistic, not telling you they're playoff bound. Could be a tough season. It's a rough schedule, new coaching staff, all of that. But when you look at the roster, there is reason for some hope. That's what I want to give you on a Friday. I want to give you hope. Not a bad thing, right? Let's jump to some of these comments. DMK Factor says, a couple weeks ago, didn't Nick have a pod talking about the failures of the offseason? This guy was one of those failures. Now he's a steal. Nick has joined the Boston media for sure now. First of all, I would say, DMK, I don't ever talk in absolutes when we haven't seen somebody play. So no. I did not say that Chuks Okorafor was a failure. I wouldn't call anybody a failure until I see them play. Until I see Okorafor play left tackle, I'm not going to tell you he's a stud or a failure. What I said was, I'm not sold on Okorafor yet, and I need to see it to believe it, which is exactly what I said during this podcast. What I'm talking about is Greg Bedard watching film, what the Patriots staff has leaked to the media saying they love what they've seen from Okorafor, and asking what if? What if Okorafor does end up being a steal? What if Okorafor does end up working at left tackle? So this isn't shifting. We've got to make sure that we pay attention to the context. Got to pay attention to words because they matter. And that's what I've said. As far as the offseason, I did not say that the offseason was a failure. If you've listened to this podcast consistently, and hopefully you have, and if you have, I appreciate that. What I have said about the offseason is that it's a B grade. Last time I checked, B is not failing. I think a lot of people would have loved to be a B student. Rick jumps in. Nick, you got to come to Connecticut for a meet and greet. Love the show and wishing you continued success. Always keep it a buck, family. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate you, my man. Try to get down to Connecticut. My schedule's kind of bananas right now with the 98.5 stuff in the pod, but trying to do what I can do. Speaking of that, tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 5, 98.5 The Sports Hub. I'll be going solo. You can check me out. And then on Sunday, I'm excited to do a show. On Sunday, I'm going to be actually doing the show with Cerrone Battle. I haven't worked with Cerrone yet. I can't wait to work with Cerrone, see how that all comes together. That's happening on Sunday from 10 to 2, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Of course, I'll be back on Monday at 11 a.m. with this pod. Training camp begins next week. Now we start to get into it. Now we start to get into the thick of it. Cannot wait. Cannot wait to get going. Oh, Rick jumps in with a super chat. Thank you. If only Bill could have drafted wide receivers like he drafted corners and girlfriends. Oh, the girlfriend thing. Did you see that picture, the selfie, where he's like putting his hand up on the fence? If you haven't seen it, go check out the Daily Mail. Bill's putting his hand on a fence, and he's like posing, and his girlfriend's like helping him pose so she could take a picture. I mean, it's classic. It is classic stuff. You got to check that out. Yeah, I said, Rick, and you've known this, right? And thank you for the $10 super chat. I've said this, the problem with Bill was offensively. It was never defensively. Offensively was the issue. So training camp next week. Thank you, Rick, for the super chat. Everybody have a great weekend. Awesome weather out today. Really good weather all weekend. So enjoy yourself. Again, 2 to 5 tomorrow, 98.5, 10 to 2 on Sunday with Cerrone. So if you're out and about, swing on by the Sports Hub. I will be on the air. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy your weekend. Be great. Be healthy. Be well. And I'll see you on Monday at 11 a.m. Appreciate you.